Welcome to the Gold Standard here from the 440 Sports Network, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and a little bit of Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. I am Braden Gall. That is Emma Lingan. Emma, good morning. How are you? Are you rested? Are you well rested?
Good morning. I am not because I have been covering the Stanley Cup Playoffs, but it's a good kind of not well rested, I guess, because it's been fun.
So we're going to talk a little bit of the locker room today. We were asked some questions at the Lower Broad Hockey subscriber chat, and Adam and I talked about this on the other episode this week. But I wanted to get your opinions on a question about Jonathan Marchessault's future. It's less about that because I feel like we know what that is. It's more about sort of what actually is happening inside the locker room, and not even from like a negative or a positive standpoint. I just thought we could define like what do we think Nashville Predators locker room culture is, and we had some questions about some of the personalities in the locker room. So I thought you'd be a perfect person to ask about that. We also had some questions about the draft picks and some trades up in the draft that we did not get to on the previous episode. So I thought we could jump into that a little bit, and obviously Fedor Svechkov playing the hero in Game 5. For the Milwaukee Admirals as they advance to the second round, or I guess it's the third round technically, the divisional championship, the divisional final, the Central Division final. Each round has like its own term in the AHL, and the bracket is drunk, so just don't look at a bracket. But lots of fun stuff to talk about today on the pod, and of course we'll get to Mikael Granlund, of course, as well. Speaking of the NHL playoffs, make sure you check out Sinkers Beverages, though. I'm violating Emma. You are allowed to chime in on fashion because you are under the age of 35. And generally speaking, I don't approve of any human male wearing two items of the same sports team in public. Like, you don't wear a Preds shirt and a Preds hat going to Target or whatever, or to Sinkers Beverages, I should say. You just don't do it. You can't wear a Tennessee bright orange shirt and a Tennessee bright orange hat and you're going to look dumb. Like, you're just going to look bad. But I'm not. Is it allowed on a podcast in which they sponsor in my own home?
Yes, of course. It's also not a sports team. It's a sponsor.
So. I hear you, but it's logos. It's brands, like two of the same. Technically, they're different logos, but here you go. I got the Sinker shirt and the Sinkers hat. In crowd, sign up for the in crowd, get great access to allocations. They got the award-winning craft beer retail fridge, 4-time liquor store of the year. Search Uber Eats, okay? Don't drive, folks. Search Uber Eats, have the booze delivered directly to your house. And today is Wednesday, which means Shotgun Willie's is back open again. Wednesday through Sunday, 11 a.m., starting in about an hour from now, through Sunday till 3 p.m. Until that meat is gone, make sure you check out Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. What's going through your head when Mikael Granlund blasts that one-timer through on a 4-minute power play at home in Game 4 for the Dallas Stars to take a 3-1 lead in what is really like back-to-back Western Conference Finals type of series for the Dallas Stars? Like, if you go through Colorado and Winnipeg, I feel like you're ready for anything in the next round should they finish the deal with one more win.
Yeah, I think I actually said out loud something to the effect of, as soon as he completed the hat trick, I think I said, well, Preds fans are going to take this very well, I'm sure. Not only that he's having success in the playoffs, but he's doing it with a division rival. But you know what? Honestly, I say good for Dallas. Like, I think that you mentioned it. They've had now back-to-back conference final level series, except that Winnipeg can't win on the road for some reason. But either way, I think that, it is a lot. It takes a lot to get through. We talk about it all year. The Central Division is a gauntlet, and now you are seeing that on the biggest stage in the playoffs. So,
Trevor says, Preds legend, Mikael Granlund. Nate says, what about 3 different teams? MTSU shorts, Vols hat, Preds shirt. First, I mean,
that's just a really bad color palette. First,
that's what. Yes, Vols and Preds should not be anywhere near each other on a human body.
No,
it just shouldn't. MTSU with the Preds, it might go. The Blues might be a little, clashy there. I just like, Nate, you don't need to do it. Like, just pick one for the day. Save one for Tuesday. Like, you could just have one for Friday. Like, you don't pick a team. Just pick a team. Chris says, hey guys, longtime listener, 3rd-time questioner. That's an interesting qualification there. I'm kind of looking for any good news other than a Swedish draft pick. We got some good news today. Any updates on Ryan Johansson's arbitration and the Preds cap space? We'll answer that second question first real fast, Emma, because the arbitration doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, his Johansson comes off the books after this year anyway. So regardless of what the decision is, it's not like the Preds are going to get money paid back to them. Like it doesn't matter because he comes off of their salary cap hit after this year regardless. So come July 1st, Ryan Johansson no longer getting paid by the Predators.
Oh, thank goodness. All right. So here's the funny thing, and we were asked this. I was watching the Star series, of course, and we were asked like, hey, who could Barry target in free agency? And like Adam and I both think, and I'd be curious what you think about this, which is that spending big on someone that's a big ticket item doesn't seem like the right strategy here unless he's like 25 and is going to be on your team for a long time and is clearly a building block piece. But it's hard not to think and look at the needs, which are depth at center and right-handed defensemen, and look at the free agents and go, I mean, you could just, Mikhail Granlund, Matt Duchene, and Dante Fabro. just go. Just get the band back together because those are all positions of need and positions that could be available. I thought that was funny.
Except they can't get Duchene because they're already paying him, and you can't re-sign a guy after you buy him out.
Don't let reality get in the way of a good story, Emma.
Hey, you could go back and get Granlund and Fabro though. You can do that. Maybe
for cheaper than you got him before. Although after the Hattie, I don't know. 2 hat tricks now for Dallas. In critical game, is the third one? Who was the other one?
Rantanen had 2.
Oh, I just count them as one because it's Rantanen. That's right. Yeah. Back to back playoff hat tricks, and then Granlund, and in critical situations, of course, as well. I just think if Edmonton looks like, despite the bizarro behavior by the Edmonton goalie in the last second of the game against Vegas, outside of that, Dallas and Edmonton. I think I said it. Those are my picks to play in the Western Conference Final. It looks like they're on a collision course, and that will be a monster of a series. And they have some familiarity. But here's my question watching the Winnipeg series, because I was thinking about the Jets and thinking about the Preds, and I'm curious what the Jets' legacy will be if they continue to kind of on this path, what Hellebuck's legacy will be. And the reason I'm thinking about that through the Preds lens is that the Preds have never, other than the division title the year after, the President's Trophy and then the back-to-back division titles, they've never really been in the Jets situation, which is consistently underachieving in the playoffs. They've always been sort of like the little engine that could. They get into the playoffs. Maybe they win a series. Maybe they don't. Most of the time they don't. And then the one year they go on this crazy run that brings all these memories and joy and passion to the fans. But the Jets have played significantly better hockey for a longer period of time, right? Like they're going to have like a 10-year stretch here where they're one of the best teams in the league almost every year. And almost every year, they're going to disappoint in the playoffs. They're probably going to win a series. They might win 2, but they just have not accomplished anything. And I'm curious if fans are happier with like a lot of 7 and 8 seeds, a lot of wild card seasons, and like one magical run to a cup appearance versus incredible regular season hockey all the time. Every year you're getting Vezina and awesome stuff, but you're kind of just always pissed off at the end of the playoffs. I'm curious how those legacies land on people. Does that make sense? That's what I keep thinking when I watch the Jets. It's like, man, you guys are so good, and you're going to get this whole era is going to get lost in history because they never really they haven't really accomplished anything yet in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty maddening if you think about it, because it's like they are so good. They perform at such a high level during the regular season, and then they get to the postseason and they just forget how they played. It's kind of baffling. I mean, Hellebuck cannot stop a beach ball on the road. Not even just him, but I think like their scorers aren't showing up either. And it's frustrating to watch, as a neutral party observer. It's frustrating for me to watch because it's like, I think that's kind of the reason. I was talking about this with someone recently that like, everyone's got their opinions on like, even if their team, like their favorite team isn't in the playoffs, it's like everyone has certain teams they really do or like really don't want to win. It's like, oh, anyone but Toronto or something like that. No one hates the Jets. No one would be mad if the Jets won the cup. If I told you the Jets were going to win the cup, you'd be like, okay, cool. And like, I think that's why, because no one really feels threatened by them. And I also personally think it would be hilarious if Winnipeg was the team to bring the cup back to Canada after 30 plus
that would
years.
be funny.
But yeah, it is frustrating.
Even Luke Shen isn't performing for them, says Keaton. Nate says
legend Luke Shen.
Yeah, you don't want to take any great hockey for granted, but winning awards with great regular seasons year after year with no postseason success would really get old. So this is what's fascinating to me about this, because the ships passing in the night was the series against the Predators in 2018, because that was the year the Jets had 114 points that year. They go to the conference finals, so that was their deepest run of this era. 7 years, 7 trips to the playoffs in 8 years, 3 110-point seasons in that era, another 99-point season, a 95-point season, nothing lower than 543 win point percentage. 9 straight years of 530 point percentage or better. They've got 1 division title, 3 second place finishes. Point is, very good regular season club the last 8 years. Very, very good. And I can't remember a moment other than watching and covering the Preds series in 2018 where they actually did go to the conference final. I don't remember a moment where I have a Jets playoff memory. I just don't. So
yeah, because there haven't been any.
Right,
That's the thing.
So
they can't get past the first round.
I'm with Nate. I think it would get old, but I also think it's kind of like the Buffalo Bills. Now it's different because they got to the Super Bowl. I think in the time that it happened, you looked at the Buffalo Bills 4 trips to the Super Bowl, and everyone was like, "These losers, they can't get anything done. Look at these losers, they can't do it." And I think as time has gone on, 30 years now removed from it, or more than that, 40 years. As more time has gone by, it becomes more and more impressive to me what the Bills accomplished. Now, that's not what this is. If the Jets go to like 4 straight conference finals and lose 4 straight, then maybe it's comparable. I'm using it as an analogy, saying in the moment it was viewed as a credible disappointment, and as time has gone on, it's viewed as more of a tremendous accomplishment. And if I'm a Jets fan or a hockey fan, I mean that's a hell of an 8-year run in the regular season. That's a lot of fun, entertaining, valuable hockey that your ticket prices were worth, right? Vezina trophies.
Speaking of Vezina trophies, I'm also gonna say, because I will never miss an opportunity to defend Jussi Saros, but of all the people who keep saying, I mean, not necessarily recently because this year was bad in so many other ways, but when Jussi Saros was signed to the contract extension last year, the whole argument against it was, well, he can't win in the playoffs, blah, blah, blah. He can't win in the playoffs. I'm sorry. Look at Connor Hellebuck right now. Talk about a goalie who can't freaking win in the playoffs. Like, I don't want to hear anything about Saros not showing up in the playoffs, because Saros is not this team's problem. I know that was the not what the discussion was about, but
you don't think Jussi Saros is to be blamed for all the Predators' problems? Okay.
Yeah, no, I know.
I didn't know that about you. I didn't know.
I know, earth shattering. But yes, I felt the need to just add that in there. But yes, Connor Hellebuck going to win the Vezina, probably going to win the Hart. I mean, he got my first place vote for the Hart this year.
Ooh.
I mean, Winnipeg is not the best team in the NHL without him in goal.
I agree.
So, I mean, if you're talking about MVP, most valuable player to his team, that's a no-brainer for me. But when someone who is that important to your team and your team's success completely disappears, and it's not even like I think people were looking at Hellebuck during the Four Nations and saying like, well, he doesn't look terrible, but he just kind of looks human now. It's like he looks like a mere mortal. Oh, he looked terrible against St. Louis. Like, he looked so bad. And so it is concerning when you can't put it together.
There's a Hellebuck tariff is what I'm convinced of. He comes on the road into the States and he loses 25% of his value.
Honestly, he's American too, so it makes sense.
Yeah, that's right. As he crosses the border multiple times in a series, and he gets charged every time he crosses the border. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
All right. So speaking of AHL playoffs, real quickly here, of course, Fedor Svechkov, if you haven't seen by now, the Milwaukee reverse sweeps the Rockford Ice Hogs, which is a great name. All the AHL, every minor league sport should have creative names for all of the teams. Baseball, it should be that way. So they win on a reverse sweep, and all the names you want to play big roles seem to have played big roles. Joachim Kemmel looks like he had some important points. Fedor Svechkov, the biggest star, 2 goals, including the game winner in Game 5. Mark Del Gaizo had a bunch of points. Stastny was getting minutes. Even David Edstrom, who has never played in this continent in hockey, of course, is in like 4 of the games, in a top level prospect for this team. I don't think it means anything for the future of the Predators, but you can't tell me it's not a positive that all these young players are getting the experience of playing in playoff hockey, of learning to sort of find what it's like to play at the top of a roster instead of the bottom of a roster, and be asked to sort of carry a roster, and then to actually follow through and perform and be productive in key moments and win games. It doesn't mean a lot, but you can't tell me it's not a positive. It's a net positive for the entire organization for this stuff to be happening. And another big series win by this organization and by Milwaukee, and I think you can start to really point to value add for next year. Honestly, I don't think it's a huge deal, but I think it's a very much a net positive.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's saying like, "Hey, Preds fans, cheer up!" Like nothing. It's okay that this year was terrible because look at what Milwaukee's doing. Like, but it is a best case scenario for the reasons that we talked about a couple weeks ago, I think, as Milwaukee was getting started with, they were about to start their playoff run. It was like, okay, the best case scenario here is we see the guys like Fedor Svechkov, guys who spent significant time in the NHL. We want to see them be the difference makers when they go back, and we want to see them take on leadership roles, whatever that looks like. We want it to be obvious watching these games. Oh, this guy learned something while he was in the NHL. And I mean, OT winner in Game 5, like they do the reverse sweep, they win 3 in a row. I mean, I feel like that's all you can ask for.
Well, and it doesn't mean that they're not making like the mistakes you would expect for an NHL player who's fairly inexperienced coming back to a lower level and thinking maybe they're just, I don't want to say like they're all thinking like, oh, I'm too good for this. That's not what I mean. But like, I have NHL ability. I've played in the NHL. I'm going to make this pass. And then it doesn't work because, oh shit, you got to like get back into like, I've got to grind to be good. Right. I think that can happen. And I think that's happened for some of the guys, but it seems like they've all come out of that a little bit. And again, this is not me saying, oh, Fedor Svechkov scored a game winner and has a bunch of points and has played in all these games, and that means he's going to be a great number 2 center for the Preds next year. Like that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying every point of that series is of value to these players' development. That's all. Because again, you want to learn to play at the top of a lineup. You want to learn to play in critical moments that are tense and high stress, and you want to see them deliver in those moments, and that's what we got. That's what the Predators got from a lot of those guys. And there's a lot of those guys that are going to be in camp that think they've got a chance to make the roster. Whether it's Ufko or Del Gaizo or Stastny or Kemmel or Svechkov or whoever, a lot of those guys, and I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of them, a lot of those guys are going to have a chance to win a starting spot on the team next year. So all good stuff. All good stuff. And if you want to celebrate, the series gets started against Texas, I believe, tomorrow night. Is it Thursday or is it? Yeah, Thursday night, game 1, and then against Texas. Again, we'll see what happens. Should be fun to watch. Important for the Preds. And if you want some beverages to celebrate over the weekend, Sinkers is the place to go. Right there in East Nashville. 40 years of service to the community. Locally owned and operated. Big Nashville Predators supporters, the Sinkers Beverages folks. Huge Preds guys. Shout out to Grant and to Joey and to Adam. All you guys are great supporters of the Preds. Big fans of the Nashville Predators. Okay, quickly here. Andy asked this question about draft trade-ups, and I think this is an interesting one. I wrote the story on Lower Broad Hockey about sort of how the big board should go. That was my opinion about all this based on sort of consensus and thinking out there. We talked a little bit about it last week, Emma, and so I sort of put it into writing. But the trade-up thing is what I've really thought through a little bit more since then. And Andy asked the question about, like, what does a trade-up look like and sort of what's the idea here? And I thought there's 2 types of trades that I want to run by you and see what you think. One is if you're sitting at 5, trade ups, and then there's a trade down I'll throw at you as well, which is less likely in my opinion. You're sitting at 5, and either Michael Misa or James Higgins falls to like 3, let's say. Maybe even 2 is an option. Maybe, and certainly at 4, you might want to move up 1 spot. And I think the cost wouldn't be egregious to go from 5 to 4 or 5 to 3. You'd think if you gave another first-round pick, you could go from 5 to 4. hey, we'll give you the 24th pick to move back one spot. You don't get Higgins or Misa, but you get so-and-so. I could see them decide. I could see Utah's at 4, right? I could see Utah saying that makes sense to us. So I don't think it would be a huge cost to go up and get, if one of those two guys, not anybody else, if one of those two guys falls to 2, 3, or 4, what do you think about a move up to make sure you get a guy who's clearly a cut above everybody else?
I would maybe do that for, yeah, I mean, I guess that's probably the only scenario in which I would say it's worth trading up from 5. But I also don't know how likely that scenario actually is, where they fall.
Well, one of them has to be available at 2.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying fall all the way to 4. Like, I don't.
I could see Higgins falling to 4, but I also could see Higgins going 1. Like,
I could see Higgins
huge Islanders fan, like the whole deal.
I could see Higgins falling to 4, but I think I want to amend what I said a second ago, which is that if Misa fell to 4, I would do that.
In a heartbeat.
Higgins, I don't know. I mean, not saying like, oh, is he any good? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I don't know that he's worth trading up for.
I think if Misa's at 3, you go get him. If Misa falls one extra spot to 3, I think you go get him. I think you need, or you at least try. Josh says yes to Misa, no Higgins.
You try again. Like, it's all gonna depend on, because who's at 3? Chicago. Like, you think they're not gonna take him?
I agree. I hear you. So maybe you have to go to 2 then, because San Jose wants the defenseman, right? They want Schaefer, and if Schaefer goes 1, maybe you go to 2 and get Misa. So point is there is a scenario in which going up to get the premier offensive center in the draft class does make sense. It makes sense. And I think Higgins, and Josh says this as well, Proman and Wheeler both have mocked Higgins to us at 5 based on fit and the teams ahead of us. I think if either of those two guys fall to 5, I think you take them and you don't even think. Easiest decision of Barry Trout's career. If Schaefer falls to you at 5, which isn't going to happen, but hypothetically, that might be the only moment I'm looking to trade out. If Schaefer's sitting there at 5 and he's best available, clear cut, and he just somehow falls, that's where I'm looking to go back to like 8, 9, or 10 and find a team that wants that defenseman badly, and you move back. If you think he's the best player in the draft, maybe you take him anyway. So I don't know. That's the only trade back scenario I like. The other one is to move up. If the second tier centers, and I'm going to use it's O'Brien, Martin, McQueen. I'm going to use those 3 as sort of a catch-all of like the next tier of centers. They're not one of the top 4 guys, but they're kind of that next tier top 10 players. One of those guys probably, and I don't know how to say the right-handed defenseman's name, Mifka. I don't know how you Murfka. I don't know how you say Murktka. I don't know how to say his name. I don't know how to say any of these guys' names.
Say it with confidence. I'll be like, yeah.
Des Noyers, if one of those guys probably does fall to like 11, 12, or 13. It happens every year. One of these guys that's kind of mocked in the 6 to 10 range ends up falling to like 12, 13, 14. That's the other trade-up scenario I really like, which is package all of your picks, whatever it takes, to come up from 23, 24, 25, and come up and get somebody at 12 or 13 that's got more value than 12 or 13, and you get 2 top 10 centers in the draft. I think taking 2 big swings with 2 high-level talents is way more valuable than picking at 24, 28, and 35. I would give up all 3 of those picks to go up to 12 or 13 and get another premier prospect. What do you think about that?
I don't disagree, but I also don't know that a team that's currently picking at 11th or 12th or whatever would be willing to dance on that. I think that, again, I see your logic. It makes sense to me, but I could very easily see the team that's sitting at 12th and be like, are you kidding? No. Because they want that guy. And I understand why all these scenarios are, I mean, it's draft season, of course, that's why we're talking about it, but like, it is important to keep in mind that, people are talking about, oh, we can package, draft picks with something and, like get deals done. Here's the thing. The Predators, if they want to get a top level center or, whatever their biggest priority is, which should be a top level center, in the draft, they don't really have, like, if they're dealing with a team that's looking for roster players, let's say, Preds don't really have any needle moving roster players who are going to help push a deal over the edge. So, and quite honestly, I don't know that they have prospects either.
Except for maybe one of the stars that would be willing to waive their no trade. Like if it's Stamkos, or we're about to talk about Marchessault or Ryan O'Reilly. Like I think one of those. I just think that this is about strategy and less about execution, you know. It's more about, if you told me this team walks away with Anton Frondel and Brady Martin, I think that's way better than walking away with the 24th, 28th, and 35th pick. I just think it's a better strategy to take a shot at higher end talent and try to get 2 players into that farm system. And again, I don't know. Do you have to pay more for 11 versus 14? Who falls? Where do they fall? Who wants to dance? All that is not necessarily part of this equation and conversation. It's way more just about, do we like the strategy? Do we like the idea? Is Misa worth it to go up to get it 2? Is one of these other centers worth it to give up all the picks for? I think the answers are yes on both of those things. I like the second scenario best. Pick the guy that you think is very good at 5, and if Higgins is the guy who falls to you at 5, great. But pick one of the 2 or 3 centers that are there at 5, and then come back up and get another top 10 player at 11, 12, 13, 14, wherever it might be, whoever might dance with you, wherever they might fall. I just think that strategy is something that this organization has never had. They've never been able to do that kind of premier prospects into their farm system all at one time. And then you look at the farm system and you go, okay. Like, because then you go Molendijk and you go Gibson and you go Edstrom and you go Kemmel and you go all these other pieces. They look a lot better with 2 premier centers in the middle, for sure. So there you go. All right, that's all I just wanted to answer that question because it didn't get answered on the previous episode. All right, let's go to wrap up here. I want to have a conversation about locker room culture. And we were asked by Shane essentially about Jonathan Marchessault's future with the team, which I thought was a very interesting question because I had not considered him not being a part of the team. You know, just because he said something at the end of the season that clearly indicates that he was a little frustrated with the system, to me doesn't necessarily indicate that he doesn't like Andrew Brunette, that they don't have a good relationship, that they don't get along. I think Jonathan Marchessault is a bit of an ornery, chip on the shoulder individual. The way he plays is sort of how he communicates in general. I don't think that's a surprise, nor should it be. He's French. French Canadian. No, I just think I thought that was an interesting question. Do you think that comment in any way? It's very possible that like he hates the system and he hates the coach. Like we don't know this stuff for sure, but based on being around him, being around Andrew Brunette, being around the locker room, do you get a sense that like this is some like unreconcilable difference between the coach and the player?
No. Jonathan Marchessault is, as you said, a fiery individual. On the ice, you can see that very clearly. He speaks his mind. And I think when Preds fans are so used to their leaders, or their star players, again, I don't mean any disrespect by this. It is truly just an observation. Guys like Philip Forsberg and Roman Josi just making the most vanilla comments to the media all the time. That's just like how they've been trained to talk to the media. They never say anything spicy like that. Even
I don't think Roman Josi was trained that way. I think he was born that way.
Roman Josi came out of the womb that way.
Forsberg has been trained. Yeah.
Forsberg has been trained. It's just kind of the Predators way, I guess, is like they just don't say anything to rock the boat. That is the kind of media training. And I know firsthand that is the kind of media training they've been given. So whenever anyone says anything even remotely spicy, I mean, honestly, if you look at things that other NHL players on other teams have said to the media, like what Marchessault said was so tame. Like it was nothing. It was like, I understand it. I understand. Like, I just think it kind of creates that juxtaposition because people are like, oh my God, a Preds player said something kind of spicy. Yeah. Oh, is he like, what does this mean for his future with the team? Look, there's always a possibility. I mean, he of the 3 guys who were signed in the offseason, He's the one who doesn't have trade protection. That being said, he also has a large family, and he has said numerous times that he did not move his family across the country to, he didn't make that decision lightly. So
Sure.
I don't think that him maybe airing his frustrations in the media in a relatively harmless way, to be honest, I don't think that indicates that there's some kind of like, there's been this tension that's just boiled over and they're headed for a divorce, because I mean, again, could it happen? Could he decide I've had enough and ask for a trade? Sure. And Barry Trotz has a reputation as a guy who will do his best to honor those requests. But being in the locker room and being around them, I mean, Marchessault is very well liked by his teammates. Like he's a good locker room presence. I mean, he's good with the younger guys. He's obviously respected among the vets. Like, it's not like he's a locker room cancer or anything like that, which I think is what people's fear is.
I think this conversation is far more subtle than people realize. And that's what makes it very hard to parse out fact and reality from sort of just like conjecture, which I realize we're doing some informed speculation here on the show. I get that. I think it should be no surprise that a player who is a fiery personality, who has made his entire career based on sort of this chip on the shoulder demeanor, who is good, over a 60-point-ish player, who still has some good years left in the tank, who's won a cup and is a Conn Smythe winner, and has all this stuff on the resume, is going to just be okay with how the season went. Like, none of them are. And so, of course, the tension, I do think there's tension, because it's not just the one comment at the end of the season, right? It's the thing in the Canadian media as well. Like, it's clear that he feels a certain way about how the season went and about how Andrew Brunette coaches hockey. It doesn't mean that it's irreconcilable. It doesn't mean that it's hostile in any way. There's a natural level of tension. Now, the question I think that's most important in this relationship, which I think is very hard to prove without just asking him, like off the record almost, because they're never going to say anything, is there's a lot of people in this industry that I am very kind to, that I'm respectful of. Like, it's not really my, like, I'm not Paul Kaharski. Sorry, PK, but I'm not like yelling at people. That's not my style anyway. But there's lots of people in life that you can be cordial with, that you can get along with, that you can work with, that you maybe don't have full respect for, right? And I think that's the question I want to know, is like, deep down, does he have a level of respect for what Andrew Brunette's doing, and for the system, and for the style, and for the philosophy, and for the person? And if deep down, maybe you don't, I can see that being a very difficult thing on a day-to-day basis to try to overcome every practice, every game, every shift, just in general. It doesn't mean you're not good. It doesn't mean you're not a professional. It doesn't mean you don't go out there and do your job and produce. But it just is one of those things that could, instead of resulting in like 100% production, maybe you get 89% production or 92% production. And that might cost you some games, and therefore maybe that's where we're at on this. I do think that of all the trade chips, he's one of the better trade chips, like, just as a fact, regardless of the conversations that have happened and the commentary and the feelings. Like, a guy who could score 60 points is of value, who's won in the playoffs, is of value to almost every team. So in theory, if you needed to move him, I think there's no problem doing that, even if you're just doing it to continue the rebuild, not for any of the other reasons we've talked about. Like, it could have nothing to do with the relationship. So with that in mind, Sinkers Beverages, by the way, Shotgun Ways Barbecue, I want to ask you, how would you define the locker room culture of Andrew Brunette and of this particular Preds roster, just in general? Like, what's the description? Like, I don't think they're scrappy. I don't think they're arrogant. Like, how would you describe the locker room?
I honestly, and we've talked about this before, there is just a little bit, I mean, over this last year especially, it seems like there's a little bit of a eggshell situation going on, and not in the sense that like, oh, I gotta be careful what I say because this guy is gonna blow up at me if I say the wrong thing. Not like that. I think it's more of like, there are no egos and it, like, to the point where it's maddening because nobody wants to step on anyone else's toes.
Yeah.
And that includes Andrew Brunette. And I think that, his thing is, his whole philosophy is he's a player's coach, players respect him, all of that. The locker room is the player's space. He doesn't want to be a dictator. And I get that. But sometimes I think that he is so hands off, and that's fine if you have a clear leadership structure in the locker room, which I think they did before these new signings came in. And now it's a little bit of like, even if they're not thinking of this, consciously, I think there is some sort of natural inclination to be like, oh my gosh, that's Steven Stamkos. Like, he's future Hall of Famer. He's won 2 Stanley Cups. Let me yield to him. But then Stamkos is coming in like, well, I'm brand new here. Like, I don't even know where the grocery store is. So like, I'm going to just kind of sit back and let these guys do their thing because I don't want to overstep. And so I think at a certain point, while these guys are not comfortable with each other, and when I say not comfortable, I don't mean like they don't like each other or anything like that. I think it's just the leadership, the chain of command is not comfortable for them. I think that is when a coach needs to step in and sort of be like, the whole I'm the captain now thing. Like, and I think that they just didn't really have that. And it was like too many, what is it like?
Well, and then the actual captain isn't there for like 35 games. Like,
also that,
but that's a factor.
It's like there's no, what's the saying? It's like too many
cooks in the kitchen,
Chiefs, but no, it's something about Indians.
Oh, you're gonna go full. You're gonna be a full. No, I'm gonna cancel you on this. No, too many Chiefs.
Native Americans.
Too many Chiefs, not enough Indians, I think is the phrase.
Yes, that's what it is, and I feel like what compounds that whole issue is the fact that this team, as it is right now in its current form, has not experienced success together. So it's very hard when, because all teams, it's a long season. Every team goes through slumps, they go through hard times, and they, it's about how they respond and how they can, pick each other up. It's not to say that it's easy to do that, but it's easier when you can look around at your team and be like, hey, we're really in the shit right now, but we've gotten out of it before, and look at what we did before, and we can do this again. This team, this current iteration of this team has not experienced any kind of sustained success together. And so I think it does make it harder to kind of like lean on each other. And again, that doesn't mean anything like, oh, there's bad blood or guys don't like each other. It's nothing like that. It is really just like there's a certain level of comfort and just familiarity that just isn't there.
I think it's disjointed. I think it was disconnected. And it's funny that every experience I had in the locker room, which was mostly in the first like 50 or so games, I hadn't been in there lately other than like once or twice, but I think it always, I didn't notice it. I didn't put my finger on it, but it did feel lacking in cohesion. It wasn't all together. It felt like a bunch of individuals, and not in a bad way, not in like an ego way to your point or a bad blood way, just in this feels like a lot of puzzle pieces that aren't necessarily in the same puzzle thrown into a box and you're trying to put them all together. And
yeah, it wasn't like the high school cafeteria where it was like cliquey and they don't talk to each other. It's not like that. It's just like you said, it just seemed very like a bunch of individuals. And I don't know, I couldn't quite put my finger on it either, but it just wasn't quite the same from what I had experienced in the years prior.
Like there are certain teams and in every sport that you walk into a locker room and you can feel how like the scrappy, gritty sort of we're in this bunker together kind of thing. Like you could feel that. And honestly, I don't think necessarily that the system, this is the thing that I'm coming around on with Marchessault, with the locker room, with the paralyzation comment from Barry Trotz that we talked about last week. Like the NHL is going towards the Andrew Brunette style of hockey. Now, do I think he needs to evolve the system? Yes. I think he needs to make some adjustments. And do some of the players have some thoughts about how they should do that? Do the defensemen have some thoughts about how they should do that? Should they play this zone shrink versus man to man? Like there are probably tweaks in there that they're frustrated with that they want to see changed, and vice versa, and whatever. They need to adapt. He needs to adapt, etc. But I think because Marchessault is so, and again, this is all informed speculation and conjecture here. We got to ask him about this to know what he's actually feeling. I think there's a chance that part of his frustration and what comes out is that the way he plays is that exact style of hockey, which is this, it's the gritty bunker mentality of like us. We are all in this together kind of deal. And if it took them 75 games to figure out how to be a unit together, that would be frustrating. If you're the guy who's always sort of like in the bunker, grinding it out every single shift and every single play. And I'm not saying he shouldn't have been like held accountable for the lack of performance and that Brunette didn't make mistakes and he didn't make. Everybody made mistakes, but it never felt like a truly like tethered together, tied together group in the locker room. I never walked in there and felt that energy, and I didn't know it at the time until honestly his comments and then Barry's comments, and now I'm starting to process it. And I'm going, that's what felt like it was missing was the cohesion. It just, and again, not because they're all bad or angry at each other. It just was a bunch of, there's a difference between a team and a group of guys. Like they weren't a team.
But when people, I think that's right on the money. But again, to your point, when a lot of people hear, oh, there's no cohesion, or it's, there's a bunch of individuals, they immediately go for the drama and be like, ooh, who's beefing? Like they don't like each other. There's like a JT Miller, Elias Pettersson thing. It is truly nothing like that. It is not that juicy. Like
I agree.
Like it is just,
and the margins for success and failure are so small that the tiniest little bit of disconnectedness or disjointedness can affect how you're going to play. Yeah. When you have bad shooting percentages, historically bad shooting percentages, and you're a little bit disconnected and you're learning a new system, like that can lead to the third worst roster or the third worst team in the league. So I'm not saying that's the answer and that's going to solve the problems, or that Andrew Brunette has the answers or the skills to step into a room and start to command the cohesion that you have to have. I don't know. We're going to find out. And again, this is all sort of just like, look, I'm married to someone who is all about psychology and leadership. So this is like what I talk about with my wife all the time. So I'm obsessed with this stuff and she's genius at it. So I learn a lot from her. And I just am sort of now that I'm thinking back on the first 3 or 4 months of the season, the things that I remember, like I'm now able to put a finger on things that I wasn't able to put a finger on at that time. And now it makes sense. Is all I'm kind of from a psychology standpoint. All right, quickly here, we'll wrap up. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Thank you for your support. Go support good local businesses. They are fantastic at what they do. They're award-winning, and they will take care of your needs all weekend long with meats and beverages. So we were asked by Brian about some of the locker room personalities, basically, and I just find this always to be fun from a conversation standpoint. Basically, the question was, let me make sure I get it correct here. I'd be curious to hear about the players' personalities and how they are to deal with. Maybe there are some surprising personalities. And my response to that was Steven Stamkos was far more like down to earth and far more just like average Joe personality in a good way when I first met him and talked to him than you expect from a first ballot Hall of Famer who's won cups. He is just sort of like a guy. And I find that fairly refreshing because you just don't know. Like I've only seen him from a distance. I think Michael McCarron is a glue guy potentially when he's when he's there and he's kind of having fun. Like he's a guy who's always putting an arm around somebody, having a good time. Where are you at on some of the surprising personalities and some of the ones that stand out to you from this season? And again, this is not a good or a bad thing. I'm just tell some stories and describe Emma's stories from the locker room.
I don't know. I think Mike McCarron is a good one. I think he's kind of the big goofball, like the big lovable goofball, but at the same time, like he will, if you ask him a serious question, he will give you a serious and thoughtful answer. He's, like he can give you some good insight there. He's not just kind of like the big dumb jock that people sometimes think he is. Colton Sissons, I think, is one who I relate to on a very personal level because we have a similar kind of deadpan sense of humor. And so sometimes people think that like, oh my God, this kid, like this guy has the personality of a cardboard box. And it's like, no, actually he's low key, really hilarious, and also can give you some really good insight when he's talking hockey with you. But the problem, not problem, but just the thing about him is that he has like zero expression on his face, and he speaks in this monotone that people think that he has nothing interesting to say, but he really does. He's also, as quiet as he is, he's a big leader in the locker room as well. Like guys really look up to him, really respect him. He's the team's rep for the Players Association. So even though he's not like formally on the leadership group in Nashville, he's definitely viewed that way. I'm trying to think who else.
I found Brady Shea to be like very like kind, soft spoken is maybe the right word.
Dude. Like I knew him from Carolina, like
Yeah.
I covered him in Carolina, but like he is such a nice guy.
Do you think he needs some like more asshole in his game?
Not in his game. No, I don't think so.
I certainly don't want anyone to be that way off the ice, but I just mean like at times I see like I think he could be more of a dick on the ice. Because he is such a soft-spoken, like nice, approachable, kind dude. Like he really is. So
he's from Minnesota. He's from the Midwest. Of course he is. But no, I think that it is funny. Like I remember at one point, it was around the midway point of the season, I was asking him for a story I was doing, was like, I was like, asking for him, like, what makes this system, a lot of people were talking about the system with Andrew Brunette, what makes it so difficult for defensemen. And like, obviously you came from Carolina where they play very different systems. Like, wonder if you could just kind of talk to me about what makes this system so difficult. And he immediately went into like defensive mode where he was like, well, I think I've been making adjustments and I think I've been getting better. And I was like, no, I'm not
talking about you.
I'm not talking about you. I'm not saying that you haven't been playing well, because I think it's like he knows and it weighs on him so much. He's like, yeah, like I know it's been rough, but I think I've been getting better. And it's like, no, not you. Like I'm not talking about you. Just like 10,000 foot view. So I don't know. I think that I don't know.
I'm serious. I think he's almost too. I think he's too nice. I think he is.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to nitpick at this point with everything that went wrong for the Predators this season. It's hard for me to look at Brady Shea being too nice and being like, yep, that's the problem.
I think it's a confluence of everything. It's part of the reason. I mean, Jonathan Marchessault and Brady Shea are polar opposite personality types.
Yes.
And you need both of them in a locker room. But I think part of the problem, if you've got a bunch of paralyzed leaders who are disjointed and not cohesive and kind of staring at each other for who's going to take the lead, you do need a little bit more grit and a little bit more,
I do think. Now, I'm not saying that this alone would solve the problem, but I think it would make it seem less stark. It is important to remember that Jeremy Lauzon missed most of the year. And if you're talking about grit and asshole on the blue line,
well,
like on the ice, off the ice, lovely person, but on the ice, he's got a lot of asshole in his game.
And this just sort of hit me, but like every time I've talked to Colton Sissons, is like he is like a super interesting, smart, thoughtful guy. He thinks about stuff. He's, all this stuff. But on the ice, everyone knows they're playing against him. Everyone knows when he's on the ice. Everyone knows when they're going up against 10. Like they know because he plays a certain way. Like he's got a Mike Fisher type of balance of like on the ice asshole. I'm going to be gritty and real hard to play against. And then off the field, and off the ice, I'm pretty calm and pretty quiet, and I'm kind of thoughtful, and I like to talk, just have conversations. Like so I think I do think they need a little bit more of that next year. I don't know. I don't know if that solves their problems. I just think it's interesting, and I like explaining to the listeners like a little insight into who these guys are and their personality types, because we do see them in a very isolated setting. There's no question we're seeing them in a very isolated setting. It's work for them. It's the office. Some of the last 5 months were really frustrating, and they're in a very difficult spot, and not a fun place to be every day with media coming into your, I get all of that. So, but that's why you make millions of dollars. So anyway, went a little long today. I apologize, Emma, but that's I think you got great insights on that part of this team. And we're going to have some stuff coming up for you. Keezer's got a bunch of AHL recap Calder Cup stuff for you. He's going to continue to cover that. He's got a great story coming from Mark Del Gaizo. He talked with him. That's coming up on the website tomorrow, so make sure you check that out. And a lot about some of the development of some of the young players around him in the AHL. So we're going to do that. We're going to have a lot of prospect stuff and draft stuff for you as well. And I know folks are asking about all the renovations coming to Bridgestone Arena. We're going to dig into that too. So we got stuff coming for you this summer. Don't go anywhere. Make sure you subscribe to Lower Broad Hockey, and make sure you stay tuned to the Gold Standard. Sinkers, Beverages, and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue do appreciate their support. Emma, where can people find you? You get more time to talk about yourself today on the show than any other podcast. This week.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan, including some Stanley Cup playoff coverage for the Hockey News. So that's been fun. If you want to hear about teams that win games.
It's been great.
Yeah.
Well, shout out the Preds there. It's been a great playoffs, like truly one of the most enjoyable first couple of rounds I can think of. So going to be a lot of fun. And I think the finals are going to be real good. And then the final is going to be even better. So we'll see. Western Conference Finals, Dallas, Edmonton. I'm there. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Thank you, Kevin.
I just hope Dallas learned their lesson from last year. If they got to face Stuart Skinner again, which it looks like they may have to, they better have learned their lesson last year.
There you go. One of those two teams is on a mission. I don't know who it's going to be, which is going to make for a fun series. It's going to be a lot of fun. Very tested for sure. Dallas will be going into that series. No question. All right. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for listening. Of course, we do appreciate all your support, all your comments. Please share the show. Tell somebody about it. Subscribe to the YouTube page. Write reviews and 5 stars for the podcast. We do appreciate that as well. If you do not give us 5 stars, you are a hater. For Emma, I am Braden. Thank you for listening. Thanks for hanging out. We'll talk to you next time.